So today I'm joined by legendary drummer Bill Goodwin, a cornerstone of the jazz world for over 6 decades. From launching his career with Charles Lloyd at age 17 to a 40-year Grammy-winning collaboration with Phil Woods, his journey reads like a who's who of jazz history. He's played with everyone from Bill Evans and Dexter Gordon to the Manhattan Transfer and continues to lead a dynamic trio performing at many venues across the East Coast. So we are live with Bill Goodwin. Good to see you, man.
Hey, how you doing, Abe?
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Thanks for taking the time today. So let's let's uh let's catch me up with like what's been going on with you like recently as far as performing and everything like the last year. So what kind of gigs are you doing right now?
Well, I spent almost 25 years at William Patterson University. I just retired in December, and I'll become a pensioner. I play once. I have a regular gig once a week at the Deerhead Inn in Delaware Water Gap, in Pennsylvania, which is a famous jazz club. And I also live at the Deerhead Inn, and I've been here almost 20 years now, upstairs. So it's a short commute on Thursdays.
And
I play around the area. I play a little, Strasbourg, East Strasbourg. Not regular gigs. The one of the Deerhead is a weekly, but I play up at a place in Jim Thorpe, which is called the Jazz Museum, and it's a cool kind of hyper-realistic artist who owns that place. And I play. There's a coffee shop across the street where I play occasionally called Orange. And I stay home a lot. I don't go into New York much. I'm going in about a month to play at Mesro with my trio. We have a new recording out, which looks a lot like this.
Well, this is good. We have video too, so for people to watch, not just audio, so we can see it.
Trio, it is, and it could be trioitis stuff. Sort of one of my really obscure jokes that nobody gets. Got great pianist John Ballantyne and wonderful bass player Evan Greger, and the trio's been together about 10 years now. We only play a few times a year. It's always such a gas when we do. So, I'm hanging in there. I'm not doing any producing these days. So I'm not teaching. I'm not producing. I'm going to still do some recording.
Is that going to be the CD release at Mesro? Like you're calling it a CD release party, so to speak?
It's already been officially released, but I'll take some with me. And hawk them. People don't buy CDs anymore.
That's why I sell my CDs for $5 because it's very rare.
Are you kidding? I give away. You can do this thing where you put the pile, on the stage when you're playing. So anybody wants a CD, take one. You got some money, leave some.
Yeah.
We instituted a thing at the Deerhead, which is called the tip jar. And we hadn't done it for years. Then we started doing it, and all of a sudden we're making more money. The tip jar, people really like it.
Yeah, I was actually down in Austin about a month ago, and I went to the Elephant Room, and that's one of the bigger clubs down and they have the tip jar to the side, and I watched the band for maybe about 45 minutes or something, and I went up to go to the bathroom. I threw money in there, and I wish I saw more people putting money in there. I mean, because clearly if they have the tip jar, that means that they're not going to be paid tremendous amount, like thousands and thousands of dollars from the venue. But I wish more people put money in.
It's a new business model we have to deal with. Me, I'm the old guy trying to deal with the new business model, but I'm kind of semi-retired, so I don't have to deal with it too much. But all my business doings are very, very straight ahead. I don't make a big issue out of it, but I want things to be a certain way, and everybody's got like a different thing. But as long as I can, achieve my goal, my longtime life's goal, which is to play music and hang with musicians and get paid and travel, I'm good. Except for the travel, I can't do so much of that anymore. I may go to Europe this summer to do some gigs, but it isn't set yet.
When you were younger and first getting started in your career, were the goals the same? Like, I just want to travel and make money and play, and that's what I want to do? Or were at the time when you started, they're saying, I want to play with this person and I want this and this, or was it just like that same mindset you have now? Like, because
no. It started when I was about 12 years old. I had an epiphany where I saw the future. Just a fleeting second. Oddly enough, while in the movie theater watching The Man with the Golden Arm, which featured Frank Sinatra, ex-convict trying to become a drummer, and the drummer on the soundtrack was Shelly Manne. And I had been following Shelly's work because I was a huge West Coast jazz fan, just really getting into it at that point, 11, 12 years old. I was learning the saxophone, and I did learn to play saxophone, but not great by any means, just very B flat, maybe B minus. But in any case, I went to movie. My mom took us because, I grew up in a show business family in Los Angeles, and my parents, I'm not bragging, but my parents knew the Sinatras very well. I mean, they were social friends, and my dad was in the biz, and my mom had been in the biz, but she retired. And so, it seemed like Frank, our buddy Frank Sinatra, was having some difficulties those days. There's some scandals in his marriage and so forth. And so they wanted to support him. So anyway, went to the movie, and of course, all my favorite West Coast jazz musicians were in it, like Shelly Manne and Shorty Rogers, and it was just like an all-star big band in one scene where Sinatra gets an audition, but he blows it. You know the movie?
No, I know The Man with the Golden Gun, though, the James Bond movie.
No, that's much later. This is in the 50s. Man with the Golden Arm is from a novel by Nelson Algren, a very famous novelist who wrote on dark subjects. It was about a card dealer in a town, which is probably like Chicago or maybe New York, St. Louis, someplace like that. But he's an expert card dealer, and he becomes a heroin addict.
Oh.
And he gets busted, and he goes to jail. He kicks the heroin. He takes up the drums as a vocational thing, and he really likes it. So he's thinking maybe he could make it as a drummer. I'm sitting there in the movie. The movie starts out with the sound of the hi-hat.
Oh.
The classic. That, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know it's Shelly Manne. And I just had this vision of, and I was playing saxophone and fooling around with the drums, but I wasn't seriously playing the drums at that time. But I had this vision of me as a drummer, way down the road, having played everywhere with the greatest people in the world. And since that time, I mean, I just saw the whole thing, and it really, most of it came true.
You're an eternal optimist.
Oh, I'm a classic Pollyanna man. I'm a very optimistic person. Lately, it's hard not to get dark, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, I like hearing your story, because for me, the reason I started playing the guitar was this movie, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Oh yeah, the air guitar.
And I just thought they were like, even though when I was like 4 years old, I looked at them like they were like the coolest people, but now you realize they're like kind of like morons when they're not the smartest of the bunch.
Oh, they're smarter than Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah. But I remember I saw the guitar and I was like, whoa, like that's what I want to do. So
isn't that the one where they have the air guitar contest with Death?
Well, it's not an air guitar contest with Death.
Well, I know they at one time they played Twister. I think that's the first movie.
That's the second one. The second one.
Oh, that's the second one. I love that stuff, man. I mostly watch cop stuff now and drama, but I'm an avid, I grew up in a movie going and, an actor's family. So I'm very, I watch probably, some series TV or, a movie on cable every day.
Have you ever seen the movie That Thing You Do?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. That Thing You Do is great. I was like, isn't that the one about the one hit wonders?
Correct. Yeah, but there's the drummer. He's a jazz drummer.
Yeah. It's I liked that movie a lot. I couldn't understand why, and I thought the group sounded wonderful. That one record really sounded like a hit record. You know, they reminded me of the Knack, because the Knack came out. They had basically one record, which was My Sharona, which was if you don't mind me saying, a motherfucker. Great record, man. I still sing along with it. If it comes on the radio or something, I'll sing along with it. And, there's other tunes like from earlier, like Mustang Sally and stuff like that. Because I grew up, when pop was rhythm and blues and pop and the blues and all that was coming right along with jazz for me, folk music. I loved it all. And I wanted to be a professional musician, so I wasn't ruling anything out. But I knew that I was basically a jazz guy. I could improvise, I could read a little bit, and I could play. It took me, between my debut there at 17 with Charles, took me a couple of years to really get my shit together. But by the time I was 19, I was playing with the big boys.
Yeah.
In Los Angeles.
When you, obviously there's more and more younger jazz musicians than there ever were, with institutions, and they're more, they're able to access on Instagram and all these other tremendous jazz. They love jazz just by seeing a video or something. They just like get an instantaneous love for it, which is great. But the opportunities aren't, they're not there as. So for those musicians out there who it's in their heart that they want to do this, they want to play, they have that same mindset as you, but things aren't going necessarily their way for one reason or another. Like what would you, if you could tell those musicians their heart's in the right place, but what if you could tell them, what would you say?
The simple rule is, don't confuse music with the music business. I was playing music, was a professional musician, and I was about close to 30 years old before, I was in my late 20s anyway, before I really figured out that I was in a business. And I had to, run it somewhat like a business. In other words, have certain standards and stuff. And I also had to pursue opportunities. So I wouldn't necessarily call people up and ask them for a gig, but I would go to their gig and hear them. And if I liked them, I would tell them I liked them. And I got in there was a line in LA, and you got in the line. There were a lot of young drummers, and we were all coming up. We were all friends, mostly. There was some competition, but it was a healthy competition. And we just go to the places, you meet the people, you do the thing. It was less for the younger players to do. I've been teaching them for over 20 years. That's what I always ask them, so when you get your degree in jazz performance,
good luck.
Like, what are you going to do? You're going to go to the session at Smalls and hold it up and say, look, I got my diploma.
Yeah, you should get it printed on a t-shirt. Get it printed on a t-shirt, like a screen printed.
Well, yeah, sure. You get it stamped on your forehead or attached. Very, very au courant. I don't know. You have to be creative, create your own scene. I created a scene where I played all kinds of music, but I always loved jazz, and I would play jazz as much as possible, either gigs or jams. I put out the word probably my late teens, around 18 years old, that I just wanted to play. And anybody who wanted to play, just call me anytime, 24 hours a day. And I would, if I was sleeping, I would get up and get dressed and come over and play.
Yeah. I love how you said
that course for about a year.
I love how you said that if they admire someone's playing, that they should go to their gigs and go up to them and tell them,
absolutely,
I want to work with you and I will do whatever it takes.
You don't just go up because you admire them. You go up because you admire them so much that you've learned their music. And you could truthfully say, well, if you need somebody to rehearse or, play with your band at a short notice, I know all your music.
Wow.
Nobody is going to be put off by that. They might want to test you on it. But I learned, there were so many possibilities, even the ones that were really far-fetched for me. I would play with my idols, right? So I learned all of Horace Silver's music. I learned all the Wayne Shorter's music. I learned all of Bill Evans' music. I learned all of the modern jazz quartet. I learned Oscar Peterson, Cannonball Adderley, Miles Davis. I still listen to Miles Davis almost on a daily basis. Though I never got to play with him, I did get to know him a little bit. And I didn't get to play with a lot of those people, but I did get to know them. And actually, Horace Silver called me to play with his band 40-some years ago. And I had already started the band with Phil Woods, so I couldn't do it. We had to run the same summer tour schedule. So I actually met Horace, and we talked on the phone for a long time, and then we met on the bus in the North Sea Jazz Festival. and then he would come to see me occasionally. Got to know all these drummers. Roy Haynes and I became pretty tight. I knew Blakey pretty well. The guys would show up at my gigs. They liked Phil's group, so they would come and see us play and hang out. And Blakey sat in with us one time. He says, "Hey man, do you think Phil would mind if I sat in?" I said, "Hey Phil, you mind if Art Blakey sits in on the drums?" He's looking at me like, "You kidding, man?" So anyway, Art went up and played a couple of tunes, and I sat with Roy, and I thought he sounded good, but he came back, he was all bugs, and says, "I can't play your drums, they're too tight, too high. Why do you tune like that?"
What did you say?
I didn't know what to say, right? So Roy pipes in, he goes, "Well, he tunes his drums like I tune my drums, not that sad way you tune your drums."
Oh.
And that's this great story, favorite story. And then they start bickering like two old ladies,
Really?
Oh, yeah, they were long time friends. They were hanging out that night, and they were drinking and carrying on, having a great time. And, I knew those guys, and I knew their licks. So I used to see them come in a club where I was playing. I started playing their licks for them, and they would pick up on it. Roy particularly would just come right over to the drums, say, "I heard that."
Yeah.
But that was, I learned Kenny Clark. I learned Philly Joe. I learned later Elvin, but I stayed away from him for quite a while. But I had all these different.
Why did you stay away from? Why did you stay away from Elvin for a while?
It was just like be dragged into a whirlpool, where you could never get out.
Wow.
Extremely strong influence and player. So I adopted some of his stuff, but I don't really play like that.
I heard Elvin say in an interview, like, "Oh, when I got on the scene, like everyone thought I was playing so different, and no one thought they could play with me because like there was he said this about his criticism, that when he got on the scene, there was kind of like shit talking about that. Like, did you see any of that when you first discovered it?
No, I saw Elvin before he joined Train.
Yeah.
He was playing with Harry Sweets Edison, Jimmy Forrest band, who was traveling with Joe Williams. So he was playing, he could play good with a singer. He could do just about anything. He could, control his stuff. He had very way control of it. And all the guys in Detroit, knew him and would swear by him. And, I first heard him on record. It was the Art Farmer record. One of his first albums was called Farmer's Market.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought he sounded it was badly recorded, and I thought he sounded really chaotic. And then I was friends with Stan Levy, the great bebop drummer who lived on the West Coast. He's from Philly, but he moved out to LA and lived there the rest of his life. He became a very good friend and mentor of mine, as did Shelly Mann. And he calls, we're talking on the phone one day. He says, "Have you heard this new Sonny Rollins record? It just came out." He's at the Village Vanguard with just bass and drums. He's got Wilbur Ware on bass, and he got Elvin Jones on drums. I said, "Elvin Jones, really?" So I heard him on a record, but he sounded like pretty confusing to me. I said, "No, man, check it out. Sounds like he's playing with two spears."
Whoa.
So you know what he meant by that.
Yeah.
African.
When the way you're talking
from Africa, man.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about these players, and you're mentioning Art Blakey and Roy Haynes. It seems like there was so much camaraderie and joy.
Oh yeah.
Well, is that still there? Is that still there with the people who were younger, like that camaraderie and that love, or is it more? Is it just different now?
No, there was a lot of love. There was competition. There was love. There was envy. All these things. You're a young person, man. You go through a lot of emotional stuff. But I worked hard at it, and I could play, and I just made myself known, and eventually I started getting called. Now everybody who hired me didn't. Somebody's trying to call me, and sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
I can't really turn off the phone thing.
No,
anyway, and I'm on my phone. So, yeah, well, sure, there was a lot of wonderful drummers. I mean, I lost a gig with Charles Lloyd to a drummer who played better than me. He was a year younger.
Did you get sad when that happened? Did you get sad? Were you sad when that happened?
Oh, I was very upset, but it really spurred me. I was very thankful in a way because it really spurred me to become a better player. I wasn't good technically at that time, so I really started working on my sticking technique and posture and learning the repertoire of the different drummers. So I could play in the mode of Roy or Max or Art, Philly Joe, so Jimmy Cobb, and there are a lot of Kenny Clark. Billy Higgins and I were acquainted, and he turned me on to Kenny Clark. I really didn't know Kenny's work. I knew his name, but I didn't really know his playing, and he became one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah. So
I was just absorbing the language, man. I was like a scholar of the drums at that time, a very stoned out scholar.
Stoned out scholar.
So, hey, man, what's happening?
No, I love hearing that. Just the way you're talking about. You were taking in the players, but at the same time have such a strong voice and style of your own. So what's the secret?
What happens is it all coalesces at some point. So by the time I was about 22 or 23, and I was playing with Art Pepper, and I started to feel, things just coming together. Like I wouldn't notice how I was playing. And I had fallen under the sway of the great drummer who was at that time in the 60s named Pete LaRocca. And I don't know if you're familiar with Pete, but he was.
Well, I know. Wasn't he? Wasn't he with Train's group? The one.
He was in the original Train.
The original Train group with. Yeah. Okay. That's how I know. Yeah.
Steve Kuhn and Steve Davis, I think, was the original band of the Jazz Gallery. And there's some live recordings from there, but they really don't do it justice. Pete was exceptional player. And he could go. The first time I came to New York in '63, he had me over to his place in Brooklyn for dinner. He said, "You need to come tonight because I got to go to Philly to play with Coltrane tomorrow." So he's solid. But I met him when he was playing. No, I met him in Chicago when he was playing with Marion McPartland, of all people, at the London House. And my good buddy from L.A., Albert Stinson, the bass player, was on the street corner where I was with this guy. I said, "Hey, Bill, how you doing?" I said, "Great, Albert. Nice to see you." I said, "Want to meet Pete LaRocca?" He said, "This is him." It's like, yeah. It was like my idol, my peer group idol. A few years older than me.
So you went to his house for dinner the day before he went to go play with Train?
He's going to sub for Alvin with Train. Alvin sometimes wasn't available. He'd be locked up for the weekend, or
yeah, exactly.
Or he might have another gig or something. In the beginning, Train just wanted to work that group, and man, once they solidified, they never stopped working. They're probably working 50 weeks a year.
A lot of it in New York too, right? Like just
all over the country.
Yeah.
He'd literally play anywhere. I saw him in LA, I saw him in Miami, I saw him in Chicago, I saw him in New York. Played in LA at Shelley's Manhole. I saw him there, half a dozen times probably. I saw Miles there a lot too.
Yeah, I can't even.
I think he played a bigger place on Sunset Strip when he had Dolphy in the band, so that was pretty early, 60 or 61. Had a group of young musicians who would, hang out together, and included some well-known, players who became very well-known later, like Herbie Lewis and Bobby Hutcherson. And those guys were my friends, and I used to play with play with them. We had little groups that we would play together. And we remember going to see Dolphy and Coltrane with Eric Dolphy, and it was McCoy, Reggie Workman, and Elvin. And man, they played like the tag to Summertime for 40 minutes, and people were like running out the door.
Did you go to the half note?
The thing was that, if I may say so, Train has become popular on jukeboxes and on the radio with My Favorite Things, an edited version of My Favorite Things from the studio. It was on jukeboxes. It sold really well. And it was very, commercial in a way, but it was the edited version. When they played it live, they played it for, an hour. I don't know. You lose track of time, really.
Did you go to the half note?
I saw him at the half note, yeah.
Can you tell me about the half note? I only know from records I've listened to and from this black and white footage on YouTube, but I would love to know more about the half.
What do you want to know?
Who you saw there, the vibe, what the room was like, the acoustics, whatever comes to mind, I would love to know.
I'm probably not thinking about much of that when I was there, because probably, stoned and half drunk. However, I was there a lot because I was still living in LA. I would take road gigs, especially if they're going to stop in New York. They play some interesting road gigs with different groups, mostly commercial stuff, singing groups. And then in the late 60s, 68, I was playing with George Shearing. And we played in Midtown at the Rockefeller Center in the they call that the Starlight Roof, Shearing. And then I'd go down to the half note after the gig and meet up with people down there, and I knew people who were playing, like it was Zoot or Richie Kamuka, Ruby Braff, Jake Hanna on drums. Certain guys were there a lot, and I would go there a lot. So got to know the owners. I was still living before I moved to New York in '69. I just did the same thing I used to do in LA. I just went around. I was like the jazz, there's the big jazz boas here,
You always made it a point.
Jake, that was a long gig. It was like a 4 or 5 hour gig. Jake would usually have me sit in on the last set if I was there.
But you would always make it a point to go hear music when you were on the road. You were never back in you weren't going to sleep right after the gig. You were going to check it out.
I'd still stay up till like 4 a.m. So.
That's you're a night owl.
Pretty much. They say if you're born at night, that's going to be your pattern. And I was born at night, but it was earlier in the evening.
And interestingly enough, the music is getting earlier and earlier, especially in New York. It's just
ridiculous, man. I wouldn't have time to go out after the gig. So when I play at Mesro, we usually park very near the Vanguard, so we can make it back to catch a couple of tunes at the Vanguard, depending on who's playing. So that, or you could go, across the street to Smalls, where I also played recently.
Yeah, I mean, it's we're lucky that the Village Vanguard is still there.
Well, it used to be so many places to go, and I was playing in New York a lot with Phil. We were either on the road or playing in New York. It was like that with Gary Burton. When I moved to New York to join Gary, we played all the time. We played the top of the gate in the Village, and then we take off and go on the road for a few weeks, come back, play a week or two at the Village gate, and then go back on the road. Like that first year I was with them, we were on the road like 46 weeks or something. Or playing, or playing in New York. And I was on the road because I didn't really have a place to live in New York. I was just surfing.
Would you say you had just a certain level of like, it doesn't matter if I have a place to live, I'm just going to do the music? Like it's like I'm in the music is my home. And was there something like a little bit of that? Like
a pretty simple equation, Abe. I'm a professional musician. And now I'm in a position to select exactly what I want to do. But when you're a professional musician with a family, a wife and a family, I wasn't turning down any gigs unless it was, really, really awful. And I really didn't want to do it or it didn't pay enough.
Mm-hmm.
I have my standards, but if it wasn't terrible, if there's some quality involved, would love to do it. And I would always try to get paid well. The gig with Shearing at that time was the highest paid gig and, jazz adjacent gig. And Tony Williams, and I used to hang out, and he was jealous of me because I made more money than he did. I said, "You ever play with Miles Davis?" He says, "Yeah, but you're making twice as much money as I am." Which
you can't really, no, but you can't. It's funny because it's like everyone has their own unique path in their career in jazz. No one's career looks exactly the same. This is so unique, and it's just but there still is that like, oh, this person's playing with this person, but you're making more money. You're playing here, but I'm not playing there, but you're playing there. It's like there's always a journey, it seems.
I just wanted to keep working, and I wanted to travel. Probably the two main things was whether play music for a living, travel, hang out with other musicians, and thinking I would like to relocate to New York. And then when I got that opportunity, I did. But I was, building up to that for at least 5 years before that.
Right. So are you open to doing more gigs locally if there were more, like for instance, if someone found like a place to play, let's say I booked a gig at some, random, restaurant or library or something, and you lived close to it and the money was okay. Like you're open to doing those types of gigs still.
Generally speaking, yes.
Yeah.
But, I am over 83 years old now, and I move gingerly. It takes me longer to set up than it does to, to get there most of the time. So I play with a lot of younger musicians, and they help me out.
I saw you with my friend play. My friend Michael Feinberg. I saw you play.
Yeah, Feinberg.
Yeah.
How's he doing?
He's good. We were just on the road together last week, and we were in Connecticut, Massachusetts.
Uh-huh.
And
who's he playing with? Who's
he playing with?
Yeah. Was his group?
Well, his group. Well, we were together. We were just doing some duo stuff, but he's. I know he's going to the West Coast, and he works with a lot of different drummers. I know. I think last year or the year before he worked with Jeff Tain Watts and did some work with Greg Hutchinson over in Europe.
But, yeah, great.
Yeah,
I love those guys.
Yeah,
Tain lives fairly near to me. He's about a half hour away.
Who's about a half hour away?
Tain.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Also, Adam Nussbaum and Rudy Royston. These guys are all around Easton, Pennsylvania, and it's about a half hour away. I see Nussbaum most often because we've been tight for many, many years, 50 years.
Yeah.
And but I see Tain from time to time, and he's cool, great player, and I love Greg's playing too. So that's good. Feinberg must be doing good, man.
Yeah, I mean,
I played with him that one night, and I don't remember much of it. I usually like people I play with, but it takes me a while to get to know people. I have a small circle of friends, but I know a lot of people. But I have a small circle of friends.
Yeah. There's the dynamic between the musicians you work with. I mean, I've always been a band leader. That's just the way my career is unfolded. To be the one to call people for gigs and everything.
Oh yeah, well, that puts you on the hot seat.
Well, that's the thing too. But then it's like, you want to start working with other people because it's not because you're bored or anything. Like at this particular point, I'm calling other musicians to play gigs. I'm talking about as many as I can, just for to spread work around. When it comes to what's right and what's wrong, and these are people I want to play with. And just to keep me in the mind of like, I need to be ready for anything.
Yeah. Well, I'm beyond being ready for anything now. It's like I used to be able to sight read very well, and now I just look at it as like, what the hell are those?
Yeah.
What's those black things on there?
Right.
But, those skills, because I'm just, I basically just do what I want to do. That could be anything. But, I had a long long career and a background in all kinds of performance. And I was not, like I said, I was not turning down work. So I did things like played in the orchestra for Alvin Ailey Ballet one season, and then started going on right after that. Started going on the road with Phil Woods, and
how long were you in Phil's band for? How long were you in Phil's band for? Like, if you, what's the exact
41 years?
41.
Yeah, me and Steve Gilmore. 41 wow. years.
I'm only 37, so.
Well, you'll see.
Yeah, but when I think about that,
going up with somebody for 40 years,
that sounds like a situation that is just got to be unbelievable.
It was happening, man.
What?
The happening. It was not. It was maybe meant to be. I vacillate between, being non-religious and thinking that there's some sort of pattern to things, because of my life has been so full of fortuitous circumstance. That's the only thing to call it. I've been ready for it. See, that's the thing. I read this quote years ago.
I'm laughing because you're so right. You're so right.
Chance favors a prepared mind.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like,
I was prepared.
Yeah.
And Phil Woods came to my house. He was traveling with my sister Jill, my older sister, one of my greatest friends and supporters. The only of my three sisters that's still alive, my older sister, and she's been so responsible in so many ways for me going forward in the business. So she literally, Bill Woods came to my house, and I didn't know him. I had never formally met him. Of course, knew his playing well, and I had heard him play live. And there he is, coming to my house, and he stayed with me for a couple of months.
Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't that pleasant.
Oh,
we did start playing together, and I introduced him to Steve, and I introduced him to Mike Malolo, our original piano player. So it was a great opportunity to do something. Let's say, like, whether I ever knew it or not, this is something I always wanted to do.
No, but you're right about
from nothing,
mm-hmm.
and then you turn it into something, and we certainly did that.
You're right about coincidences and stuff. Like a week ago, I was thinking about my career. I'm like, maybe I have to, put myself in a situation I don't want to. Basically, like, put myself in a financial situation that I don't want to get to
that.
What?
Don't do that.
Well, that's what I think. I'm like, but I thought about it, and then the next day, the situation came, and I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to actually make money, and I didn't have to ask. You know what I mean? So, but this was like less than 24 hours.
The money is only primary if you need to, eat and have a place to live and all that.
Right.
I mean, it is important. I don't know what anybody says, but this whole cultural landscape in the States has become pretty grim.
Well, the States is, like, that's a whole other conversation, but even health in here and, all the different epidemics that do not exist on the other parts of the world. It's just,
well,
that's another story.
Yeah, that's a related story. As far as the business goes, that all affects, the pandemic did not do much for my career. Still, not really taking many gigs anyway, but, teaching remotely and all that stuff was a real pain in the neck.
Well, at this point, you're doing what you want to do, it sounds like.
Yeah, I'm doing what I want to do, and I'm doing what's, deciding on what things that are presented to me, what I will do. I'm pretty open. I could play an R&B gig, but I'd have to rest for, an hour between sets.
Yeah, no, it's got to make sense. And that's the point.
I love that stuff. I was really good at it at one time. I say, the drummer Christopher Parker?
Mm-hmm.
And Chris and I are very similar in a lot of ways. He's basically a jazz player. He's specialized in funk and R&B. And his brothers and his fathers are all drummers. There's like 5 of them. And, and they're all very astute, students and purveyors of the instrument, or as I like to call the drums, the alleged instrument.
Yeah. No,
not a real instrument.
No, Bill, this has been such a pleasure to sit and speak with you. Probably one of the most honest conversations I had. I love when I look at the clock and it's like, oh, we're like 45 minutes in already. When these interviews.
Really? No kidding. Man, I could talk like it's going out of style.
Well, we'll do it again, man. I mean,
actual questions do you have?
What?
Huh?
Wait, what'd you say? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. You said.
I said, well, do you have actual more questions?
I don't have any questions. I just want to talk to you and ask the questions based on the conversation.
Yeah. Well, it's been a very interesting journey for me, if I can use that term. You know, I've been through a lot of bands, a lot of phases, but I was in that one solid thing for over 40 years. And I became the producer of the group and of Phil also. So I got a lot of experience that stemmed from my relationship with the group and with the Phil and the guys in the band. It was a part of it. And then he married my sister, so it became my brother-in-law.
Yeah.
Now I have to work with him. But, it was musically strong, very strong. And I think we left plenty behind for people to know that. And nobody seems to be that interested. It isn't like we're going to have a big revival like Mingus Big Band or anything like that. But everybody's, doing different things. And we've talked about getting back together, but what's the point? We don't have an agent, and we always operated, kind of out of our own cottage industry. And, with the help of certain people in the profession, but the business has changed. You can't just go out and call people up and start doing business.
Right.
It used to be possible. Well, going back to your question about the young players, they have to start their own things. So, if you love the music, you're going to play the music.
Thank God you're saying this to me.
You make a living. Then you organize a jam session, on a certain day, or you join a rehearsal band. You keep meeting people and looking for opportunities to play.
I love how you're saying this, because
make the decision whether you're going to do that $10 big band gig or the gig for $300 because you made more money last week, so you could afford to do the cheaper gig, or hopefully it's on a night when you're not working, which for me is most nights.
Yeah.
But I don't do that kind of stuff anymore. I'll rehearse with a group if we're going to play a gig. They want me to, but I prefer to just go and play. I don't like to read music anymore, and I think it stops my flow. This is the lazy man's explanation.
Oh, I don't like reading music on gigs, so you're preaching to the choir.
Well, I'm an ear player anyway, man. I'm essentially a free player.
Yeah.
But it could be within the bebop realm, rhythm and blues, could be free jazz, could be a lot of different things. I know a lot of different things, and I have a lot of experience. So.
Yeah, no, Bill, this has been so great. Like, let's do it again, please.
Absolutely.